A hostel can be a great place to get a good night's rest at a reasonable price. However, when sleeping in a room with strangers, you never know the intentions of the person sleeping next to you. Number 1. I live in China. I first came here in 2013, when I was 20 years old. At the time, I was living in the capital. I was, and am, a student, and during breaks from school, I enjoyed using the money I made teaching English to go travelling alone. In general, I think China is a really safe country, as compared to the US. I have been followed and harassed countless times in the USA, but it just doesn't really happen here. Yes, people stare at me in the streets as I'm very pale and have curly red hair, but aside from this encounter, I have never felt unsafe in any significant way. So around the end of my semester that year, I decided to travel to a city in Western China. It is a city with a rich history, and I was excited to go check out the monuments and relics there. I had stuffed a huge backpack and went on a 14-hour train ride to get there. For anyone who has never been to China or taken a sitting or standing train here, just imagine the most crowded, long, and uncomfortable metro or bus ride ever for 12 or more hours. People smoke in the carriage, and I saw someone pee outside the bathroom. But really, no big. I had travelled very far by myself before, so I handled it all pretty well. At the time, the city didn't have very well developed metro systems, so after I arrived, I had to take a bus to find my hostel. Due to the narrow streets and high density of tourists, I was trapped in traffic for hours before I finally found the tiny hostel just inside the city wall. I was really tired when I arrived, but the hostel was beautiful, and there were loads of people hanging out in the courtyard. The courtyard was partially open and beautifully adorned with plants and bird cages. I sat there drawing in my sketchbook for a while and chatted a little with some of the Chinese guests. After a while, I noticed that a very gaunt and spindly boy with big, staring blue eyes was just sitting in the corner watching me. Eventually, he sort of slouched over to me and struck up a conversation. I judged him to be about 16 or 17 years old and discovered that he has the male version of my name. He told me that he had taken the train from Germany through Russia and arrived in China. He didn't speak any Mandarin, only 3 words: beer, thank you, and sorry. He was weird, had a strange soft voice, and moved in this kind of delicate, sauntering way. I almost felt sorry for him and found his face interesting, so I agreed to help him go to the market and buy random baubles to take back for his friends. He had a lot of cash on him and insinuated that he had made it by selling drugs. This is a massive no-no in China, and I did not want to know anything about it. We walked around chatting for a long time and decided our route through the labyrinths of street markets by flipping a coin. I helped him buy some things, we drank some beers together and bonded, all very standard. There was a bar in the basement of the hostel. It had a pool table and draft beers, and was also teeming with foreigners. So we returned to the hostel, and then he invited me for beers in the basement. I love pool, so we played a few games for money, and he was a shark and beat me every time. Because I was losing, I started to get bored and my eyes wandered around the bar. That's when we saw each other. I accidentally met someone's eyes as I was sweeping the room. He was dark, had a shaved head and was very muscular and tall. He had a kind of glowering look in his eyes, not immediately scary, but unsettling. I don't know why, but I stupidly assumed that everyone in the bar must have been a guest at the hostel. Because the man's eyes met mine so exactly, I immediately figured that he must have been watching me. I was wearing a pretty dress, and sometimes when I'm drunk, I become very haughty and self-assured, so I gauged that he was just probably checking me out. But I ignored it and went back to talking idly with my new friend. After a while, we were both bored of pool, so we puttered over to the bar for more beers. After we sat down, the man with the glowy brow immediately stood up and beelined over to us. Without even saying hello, he asked, "Is this your boyfriend?" Ha, I thought. I was right, he was checking me out. The skinny blue-eyed boy joked, "Yeah, this is my girlfriend. We just met today." I laughed and told him that he wasn't my boyfriend, just a friend. And then the guy invited us for drinks over at his table, where there were about 20 people sloshing down rum and coke. My friend and I obliged. I felt safe, my friend was with me, and there were a lot of other girls at the table. He introduced us to a friend, another hulking dude. I remember that he was wearing a striped polo, but don't remember any of their names. I drank a few rum and cokes, and at this point I was totally plastered, but functional. I was joking with the skinny boy and laughing a lot, when suddenly, the guy stands up and says, "Let's go to Tango." Chorus, "What's Tango?" It was a club, just a 10-minute taxi ride away. At first I was reluctant, but cheers of "Yeah, let's go dance" from the group persuaded me. The entire huge group of people, including my spindly friend, went outside to the street to hail a taxi. I was drunk, confused and cold, but still laughing and joking around. My twiggy friend gave me his hoodie and then said, "I'm too tired to go to this club. I'm gonna go to sleep. Hang the hoodie outside my door when you come back." I felt something fall off the shelf in my head. Twiggy Boy had been a sort of safety net. I liked him, and he was giving me a very platonic and brotherly vibe. Not once had he commented on my appearance, or asked about my relationship status. Just as a taxi pulled up, he disappeared. The large group of people suddenly dispersed, and the glowering man literally grabbed my arm and threw me into the taxi. You have to understand that I am quite thin and somewhat weak, and these two guys, Glowers and the guy in the striped polo, were enormous, at least 20 to 30 kilograms heavier than I am. I had no idea what was happening at this point. This part is a little blurry. I was sitting in the taxi between these two massive guys, inhaling their excessively applied cologne and deodorant. They were both really sweaty, and I didn't even know their names. Glowers instructed the taxi driver to go to the club, and at this point, I realized that his Mandarin was not very good. I asked where the big group of people had gone, and he just said, "They're not coming." I felt a huge dense pit of fear harden in my stomach. After that, no one spoke for a while. To break the silence, I started asking inane questions. Turns out they were both from Nigeria. They were both students too, studying medicine, apparently, and they lived in the city, and I discovered that they were not guests in the hostel, but just liked to go to the basement bar to meet other foreigners. When we arrive at the club, I was shuffled out of the car and had an impulse to jump back into the taxi and run away. I was very drunk, and my balance was somewhat compromised. Before I had a chance to collect myself, Glowers had linked arms with mine and started walking me towards the door. I didn't resist. I was scared. The club was on a second floor of a building, and it was packed with people, mostly Chinese. There were some other Africans there, and Glowers ushered me over to their table. There was one other girl with long hair, and they appeared to all be friends. She said that I was pretty, and I shit you not, then went to ask them, "Where did you find this one?" Everyone laughed. I looked down and said nothing. Glowers was still holding my arm. He dragged me over to the bar, and at this point, I was feeling like a ragdoll. I was afraid, but couldn't seem to motivate myself to bolt. He introduces me to the bartender as his new girlfriend. I was shocked, and at first said nothing. Apparently this guy was a regular at the club, because the bartender, a young Chinese dude with a cool haircut and a lot of ear piercings, seemed to recognize him and replied, "Oh really?" He laughed. "Yeah, really." He then put my hand on his waist and started trying to make me dance with him. He also kissed me. Now to be clear, I didn't feel particularly freaked out or assaulted. This sort of thing happened to me a lot in life, and I generally just shake it off and carry on with my business. I didn't feel as freaked out by the touching as I did by the fact that he was loudly declaring to every person he recognized that I was his new girlfriend. Remember that I said I had disconcern that Glowers' Mandarin was less than excellent? So I pulled away from him and leaned over to the bar. I told the bartender, "I'm not his girlfriend. I don't know this man, and he lied to bring me here." The bartender was not altogether alarmed by this, which I found extremely disconcerting. He told me that I should leave. This was pretty much enough for me. Glowers still had his hands on my waist. I pushed them away and told him I really had to pee, and to please let me go to the bathroom. He said okay, but you better come back. Don't try and run off. He capped this off with a weird little fake hollow laugh. I went to the bathroom, which was behind a sort of dividing wall, but on the other side of the club from the elevator and the doors. There I found a security guard, and told him that there was a man trapping me in the club. He asked me to identify the man. I looked over in the direction of the bar, but he wasn't there. I freaked out and ran into the bathroom, locked myself in the stall, and stayed there for a few minutes. When I came out, Glowers was standing immediately in front of the doorway, smiling like we were old friends. At this point he could probably tell I was afraid of him, because I was making no effort whatsoever to control my facial expressions nor demeanor. Nonetheless, he took my arm and led me over to the bar again. The security guard noticed. At the bar, the stylish bartender started teasing him. "She's not really your girlfriend, is she?" At this point, Glowers started to get kind of angry, and I sort of slithered out of his hands. I ducked under the level of the bar and ran over to the bathroom where the security guard still was. The security guard told me, "He's looking for you," and I bolted for the elevator. I was crying, red-faced, and stumbling badly when I crashed into the elevator. I was alone, and I breathed in relief. When the elevator doors opened on the ground floor, he was standing right there in front of the doors, and his face had changed. It was intensely disturbing. His brows were all knotted up and contorting, forming a weird knob shape over his eyes, which were engulfed in shadows. His mouth was twisted in a sneering frown. I was paralyzed in the elevator. There was another security guard on the ground floor watching this happen. The guard had no context whatsoever for what was going on, and glowers started shouting at me very loudly and aggressively. Things like, "You're a rude bitch. You know that?" And, "You stupid whore. When a guy invites you to a club, you don't run away without saying goodbye. You're disgusting." I was mostly just bewildered, crying from fear, and trying to will my legs to take me the hell out of the elevator. I finally let the dam break. Adrenaline pumped through my body, and I didn't run. I flew out of the elevator, maybe the fastest I've ever ran in my life. I charged through the parking lot, insane with terror, arms flailing. At this point there was a crowd of security guards watching this happen, but none of them moved. They all just kind of stared blankly at the scene. I knew that the guy was chasing me because I could hear his feet, and he was screaming all manner of curses to me. I don't know how close he was, and I didn't look behind me. I just ran. I had no idea where I was going. It was really late, I think around 3 AM, and taxis were scarce, but there was one slowly circling the area. I ran for the car and jumped inside, slammed the door and screamed at the driver that I was being chased by a crazy man, and to please just drive in any direction at all. The guy actually ended up getting pretty close to the taxi. One of the last things he screamed at me hit me really hard. He screamed, "You're ugly. I'd never touch you anyway. I thought of you as a sister, you greedy bitch." So yeah, asked my taxi driver to just drive around randomly for a while, then returned me to the hostel and cloistered myself in my room. I returned my twiggy friend's hoodie in the morning, hanging it outside of his room. I sometimes imagine that I have a kind of spiritual bent to my thinking, and at the time, I imagined him as some sort of apparition, whose gift had protected me that night. Fortunately, I never saw any of those people again. Number 2. I used to stay in a hostel whilst I was working. When I worked the UK shift, which was 2 PM to 12 AM in India. That day I worked an extra hour and came back to the hostel at 2 AM. I changed and wasn't feeling sleepy and had a pillow beside my bed. I was leaning on it and had my earphones in and was listening to a few songs when the girl who was sleeping in the bed opposite started to move restlessly. I just thought she was having a bad dream, but she kept moving for another 5 minutes. I paid her little attention when she got up from her bed slowly and walked to her cabinet, took the Bible in her hands and hugged it. It was then I got concerned and asked her what happened. She told me something was on top of her and clearly felt something, as if a person who was a lot stronger than her was pressing her into the bed and choking her. She was fighting to get up and moving her hands as if signaling me to help as well as call my name, but I didn't hear anything. I never put headphones in full volume, and yet I heard nothing. She said that the entity had tried to kill her. She couldn't breathe or see anything, but then somehow managed to collect her remaining will, got up and took a Bible into her hands. And she said that when she touched the Bible, whatever was holding her immediately left. She felt her body become free and light. I told her that there was a scientific explanation to all of this. Her bed was in a corner. She said that she felt breathless and if someone was holding her. I explained that that was probably just a lack of oxygen. She replied that she sometimes also hears babies' cries in the middle of the night. I told her that I had come back to the hostel many times around midnight, and there are a lot of garbage bins near where we are. Cats will often fight each other for food, and their cries can be mistaken for that of a baby's. I told her that I see it daily, and that she doesn't have to worry. She just stared intently into my eyes and replied, You won't realize it until the day it comes for you. Just wait." She laughed a little and went back to sleep. All of this happened in November. In December, I changed my room from the first floor to the second floor because I didn't get along with the other girls. They gave me the room in the second floor exactly above the same room that I stayed in, and my bed's position was in the same place where the girls' beds were, in the corner. Exactly 1 month to the day, same Friday and same time, 2 AM, I came back to my room and went to the bathroom and then slept. I don't know how much time later, but I myself felt a very strong existence on my body, giving me the same experience that the girl described. I couldn't breathe. I seriously thought that this thing was going to kill me. I called out for the 2 girls who were sleeping in our room. I even pushed a steel glass that was on the stool near my bed, but they never woke up. I collected all my strength, opened my eyes, and there was a huge God picture on the wall beside my bed. I silently prayed, "Help me," and screamed, "Leave me now!" And on that instant, I felt free. Whatever was pushing down on me and choking me left me that second, and I felt as if I was floating. The other girls were still asleep, despite the fact I screamed and made noise. I drank water and intended to find out whatever tried to kill me. I went out, checked the toilets, lobby, kitchen and the balcony, and it was only around 3 AM. I couldn't find anything. It was all dark except an eerie yellow light near the toilets. I couldn't find anything rational. I still don't know if ghosts exist, but I don't argue with believers now, which is what I was doing before. All I can say is there is something out there that you don't want to mess up with. I wanted to tell this story to many girls and our hostel warden, but the girls are chickens, and I didn't want to scare them because a good few of them already don't feel that safe in our hostel, and I didn't want to increase fear because the warden is a good woman and she would lose a lot of business. Nothing much happened after that. However, it's safe to say the experience I had was more than enough to change the way I thought about these things. My day had come, just like the girl said. Obviously, it's not normal for you to just run out of oxygen and feel exactly the same 1 month later on the same day and the same time as someone else had. It's as if it were destiny. Number 3. This happened when I was 14-15. My school has an option. If it's too far for you to travel to school, you can always just stay in the hostel. You pay a certain amount monthly, and on alternate weekends, they'll let you go off to see your parents. So this is an all-girls school, and we experienced change of guard a lot after our previous guard passed away. The late guard was a nice chap, and acted more like a grandfather to us. He was in his late 50s and early 60s, bringing us food from his wife and candies, until one day, a man in his 30s took the guard's post after quite some time from the hostel being without one. The new guard was a bit off. There are times when he would walk past our study room and stand by the window staring at us. Other times, he'd stay outside the gate near the shower room smoking ciggies. It creeped us out a little, but we didn't really do much, as the wardens were also wary that we wouldn't be able to get a new guard if they fired him, so he stayed. Whenever he was around, we got uncomfortable. We would usually just close the door to the room we were in, so that he couldn't peer inside. Fast forward a few months, our panties started to go missing. We have this place right behind our hostel block that's allocated for us to hang our laundry, to air and dry it. Some girls would soak their clothes in softener for the night and leave their clothes, including panties, in a pail in the laundry room. So next day we wake up and all of our panties would be missing. It went on for a few weeks and we started getting anxious about the missing panties. It came to a point where a few girls were left with only one pair. They had to give their parents an emergency call to buy them more and send it to the hostel. Our wardens were getting anxious too. We alerted the school and the local enforcement, but nothing was being done. We were left on our own. One weekend, 2 girls went behind the guardhouse to get some cleaning stuff. We cleaned up part of the hostel on alternate weekends when we didn't have outings, and noticed a large garbage bag. They left it untouched at first, but when they returned to put back the brooms and mops, one girl got curious to find out what was in the bag and decided to take a look. Inside, there were heaps of our missing panties. Both girls freaked out when they saw the young guard coming towards them and yelling some profanities and asked them not to touch the bag. They both ran towards the main hostel building straight to our warden's room. Our wardens were both alarmed and called the police straight away. Then, armed with a few burly girls who happened to be hockey players with their sticks in hand, went looking for him. The guard, however, managed to get away on his motorcycle, but a few days later the police caught him snooping around our hostel when it was almost lights off. Turned out he had been a repeated sex offender caught a few times being a flasher around schools in the city. We were all relieved to have him locked away in jail, but also upset that our school had been so careless in hiring a guard for the hostel. Our parents demanded a PTA emergency meeting and decided that the next one they hired had to be approved through the PTA first. It was scary to imagine that this guy had the keys to almost all rooms in the hostel except for the dorms, where only a dorm leader is allowed to have the key. But imagine what nasty things he could do if 2 girls didn't discover those missing panties. After all, this man had been entrusted to guard us from harm, but he turned out to be the danger lurking around. I still have shivers down my spine when I think of him. So perverted hostel guard, let's not meet again. Number 4. I was travelling with my best friend in Peru, and we were staying in a hostel in Arequipa. On our 3rd night there, we went to a small dance club where I accidentally dropped a full glass on my foot, resulting in a foot injury. This injury caused me to be hostel-ridden for about 3 days. I spent most of my time in the lobby, on the hostel computer surfing the web and smoking cigarettes. There was a really nice guy working reception. He would bring me packs of cigarettes for no reason, which I would chain smoke as I had nothing else to do, and would always ask me how I was doing. I was able to practice my Spanish a bit with him, but we never had any full conversations. He seemed shy. One night, after my foot finally healed, I went out with some new friends I had met in my hostel. They were checking out the prices, but ended up renting a room elsewhere. My best friend, the one I was travelling with, decided to call it a night early and did not come out with us. It's about 2 AM. My friends drop me off at home, where the guy at reception opens the door for me and lets me in. I said hello to him, exchanged a few words in Spanish, and made my way to the hostel phone to call my boyfriend back home. Our conversation was brief as I was tired. Never once did I feel that anyone was watching me, but I was a bit tipsy and did not look around. After I hung up the phone, I walked down the hall and started to unlock the door to my room, when all of a sudden, I felt someone grabbing me. I turned around and saw that it was the guy from reception. He was pushing me into my room. All I could think to do was stammer, "No gracias," and pushed him away. But he was stronger than I was, so my pushing did nothing, and he started groping at my chest whilst trying to forcibly kiss my neck and face. He grabbed one of my wrists and started pushing me towards my bed. During the struggle, I managed to turn the lights on, which caused my friend to wake up to see what was going on. She asked loudly, "What's happening?" seeing that there was someone else in the room. The guy from reception fled. I was left shaken and afraid. Our hostel was no longer a safe place for us. The next day, I debated whether or not to say anything to the hostel management. I decided it was my duty to disclose what happened to the off chance that they would believe me, fire the guy, and prevent this from happening to any other girl. Management did not believe me. However, they told me that he was a nice kid and would never sexually assault anyone. Right. That was about 3 weeks into our 3-month-long trip. So I learned an important lesson fast. Always have your eyes open and always observe. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I think the moral of the story is just stay in a hotel. It's not like they're haunted half the time anyway. I would like to expend a special thank you to Bagavi for sending in her story for this video. If you have had a creepy or paranormal experience you wish to share, feel free to send it to my email, which you can find in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please let me and everyone else know by smashing that like button. My question to you though is, in your opinion, which of these 4 incidences would be the creepiest if it happened to you? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget you can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter at the Mortis Media for some secret stuff that you won't find anywhere else. But anyway, for now guys, I'm going to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.